So with the fantasy football season starting in a few weeks here, here's a few quarterbacks I want to target draft day here. And it's not going to be all obvious quarterbacks, obviously, like a Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts. It's going to be other types of quarterbacks as well in the later rounds. So the first quarterback I want to target this season here is Justin Herbert on draft day of the Los Angeles Chargers. I know Herbert last season, he's had a couple mediocre to poor ball games last year, but a lot of injuries obviously over there with Los Angeles. Mike Williams, he missed a bunch of games. Keenan Allen, he missed about 9-10 ball games last season. But Herbert last year, still 4,739 pass yards, 25 touchdowns, 10 intos, 147 rush yards on the season. So right now, Herbert, we know the first two seasons of his NFL career, he threw over 60 touchdowns. And like I said, these weapons are going to be there now, hopefully for the whole season for Justin Herbert and the Chargers. They drafted rookie Quentin Johnson, and you still got one of the best, if not the best, receiving running back out of the backfield in Austin Eckler at least for one more season. So right now, with all that together and Herbert signing his big contract in the offseason, with that's out of the way, I think Herbert's going to get back on track this season and have a monster year. And it wouldn't be surprising to me if he throws for 5,000 yards and at least 30-plus touchdowns. And right now, he's going about 6th or 7th round in most fantasy drafts. He is Justin Herbert. But right now, he's definitely a quarterback I would target. A quarterback, like I said, that's going to bounce back. Even though last season the stats weren't horrible. But yes, there were some ball games where he did score 15 or less fantasy points for the week. But right now, Justin Herbert, definitely a quarterback I would target going into drafts. The next quarterback's Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Lawrence, he took the next step last season after his rookie year. Definitely was a lot of growing pains in a tough rookie year, where last season 4,113 pass yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 291 rush yards, and 5 rushing touchdowns. So he's a dual threat kind of. Here's Trevor Lawrence. He's going to get you at least probably 20, 30 rush yards per game and a touchdown every few games. And now he's got Calvin Ridley added to the mix as well to go with a Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, and a Travis Etienne coming out of the backfield. So right now this Jacksonville offense, pretty solid with a decent amount of weapons on this roster, no doubt about it. And like I said, to add a Calvin Ridley to this roster where they didn't have to give up much to get him, even though I know, well, last season he was suspended, it could pay big dividends for fantasy owners, obviously, and Trevor Lawrence. So right now, Lawrence, just like Justin Herbert, I think he's going to have a good season once again this year. And he's going about 6th, 7th round in most fantasy drafts with Lawrence. The only thing is, I think we're still going to see some growing pains in year 3 with Lawrence. But still, I think he could finish the year within the top 10 at quarterback. And where he's going ADP and round-wise, I think it's a decent quarterback to target this season. Next quarterback's Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears. So Justin Fields, they finally let him do his thing last season. Week 5, Week 6 versus the Dallas Cowboys, whatever it was. And ever since then, he really broke out, Justin Fields. And he had a great season last year in terms of fantasy football. In terms of throwing the football, obviously, he still wasn't that great. But they even got DJ Moore added to the offense for him. And Robert Tonyan, which was a good signing as a backup tight end. So on the season last year for Fields, 2,242 pass yards, 17 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 1,143 rush yards, 8 rushing touchdowns, and a 2-point conversion. So we saw Fields many times last season have 50, 60-yard touchdowns running the football. And that's the dynamic here. But like I said, now they added more weapons to the passing game. If he could be a little more accurate and also run as well he did last season, or at least have 900 yards rushing, which I think he could do once again this season, as long as he's healthy, Justin Fields. He definitely could be a top 5 scorer in fantasy football at the quarterback position is Fields. That's just the upside he has, especially with the rushing yards and the big playability of making nothing into something. Obviously, the accuracy's got to improve in throwing the football, but in terms of putting up points, he could be a weekly guy that's most likely going to lead your team in points. Here's Justin Fields. And right now, end of the 5th, 6th round, he's going usually. And I think that's a good range for him. Right now, in the quarterback rankings, he's probably 7th or 8th range. Him or Lamar Jackson is a close call, obviously, in the rankings. Him or Justin Herbert's pretty close, or Lawrence. So right now, in that range, this is where Justin Fields fits in my opinion. And I think, once again, he could have a solid season for fantasy owners. So he's a quarterback I would target. The next quarterback's Aaron Rodgers of the New York Jets. So Aaron Rodgers, I know last season it definitely was a down year for him after coming off an MVP season a few years ago with the Packers. But now with the New York Jets, a lot of hype going into the season, even though I'm not buying most of that hype for this New York Jet team. But in terms of fantasy football, he's got solid weapons over there in New York. You got Breece Hall. We'll see if he's going to be healthy coming out of the backfield. Allen Lazard, obviously, coming with him from the Packers, and Randall Cobb to the Jets. You got Garrett Wilson, who had an impressive rookie season last year. And you even got Corey Davis. Obviously, he's your third, fourth receiver, which is pretty solid. And tight ends, Tyler Conklin and CJ Uzomah. So right now, the weapons are around Rodgers. Last season, like I said, was a down year. 3,695 pass yards only, 26 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions with a rushing touchdown. But right now, this season, I think he's got a little bit more weapons. And he's with one of his old offensive coordinators as well here in Hackett coming to town. So that definitely could be a recipe for success. And Rodgers, he's going 10th, 11th round. I don't think he's better than any of these other quarterbacks in terms of fantasy football that I mentioned early in the video. But in terms of ADP and his upside with this roster here, I think Aaron Rodgers could be a decent quarterback this season and could average 25, 28 fantasy points per game in some weeks. I would target him this week because of the ADP more this season more than anything. And the fifth and final quarterback I look to target on draft day here is Deshaun Watson of the Cleveland Browns. So Deshaun Watson, we know he pretty much missed a year and a half. And last season it wasn't good for him in only 6 games. 1,102 pass yards, 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 175 rush yards, and a touchdown. We remember a few years ago with the Texans, that high-flying offense with Hopkins and Will Fuller as his main receivers. He had some heck of a year. It was Watson. He's got a lot of good weapons here. When you got Nick Chubb, who's possibly one of the best backs in the league. You got good receivers this season. Last year, Amari Cooper came out of nowhere. He played well with Jacoby Brissett. Got Donovan Peoples-Jones, he was well. And then you traded for Elijah Moore, who 2 seasons ago was solid for the New York Jets in his rookie year. And last year, it just didn't pan out. And that tight end, you got David Njoku, who's an athletic freak. So right now, all the pieces are pretty decent over here on this Cleveland Brown offense. And now with a full training camp and getting all that stuff behind them with the suspension and the off-field problems, I think Watson could go out there and be a solid fantasy quarterback. And right now as well, he's going anywhere from 9th to the 11th round, which I think is pretty solid ADP. So right now, with a good offense around him, improved offensive line, and one of the best running backs in the league as well to back him up, I think Deshaun Watson could have a good season this year here. And definitely a quarterback I would target. So that's a few quarterbacks I look to target entering your fantasy drafts in the 2023 season.